ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम्। We are meeting after a break, summer break. So it is breaking the bondage after the deep summer, long summer holidays. We saw up to now 11th verse of Bhajagovindam. The beauty of this text is, it is a combination of teaching from the standpoint of knowledge and from the standpoint of devotion. Man is essentially, human being is essentially a combination of head and heart. We have the intellect to make decisions, think rationally, have our own logic of things based upon our knowledge, education, culture, etc. At the same time, we are also a product of our feelings, our own pet ideas, and our own seeking and longing. So therefore, we cannot completely ignore the role of the mind while getting educated in different subjects. Most often you will find that you like a subject not because it is intellectually appealing to you, but somehow touches your human part of it. Some people choose their profession merely because it is very lucrative. That gives them a lot of opportunities to earn money or find a easy employment, or very challenging. But I have seen many people who have taken to such jobs because it is very intellectually challenging, lot of opportunities, lot of ability to, or the opportunity to show one's ability, skills. But after some time they say, Swamiji, my heart is not in that. I know one person, he wanted to do medicine when I was growing up. And he could not get the seats in India. It's a little difficult, not like today. Even today, it's not that easy. So he somehow got into BSc Zoology, in India, zoology. I don't know what they study in zoology, maybe about zoos. That's what my idea was. So he got into BSc Zoology. Then he studied and he finished. You know what job he got? Bank officer. What is the connection between zoology and bank officer? Anyway, he served for next 20-30 years. But every day when you come back home, he will sit with the medicine book. He will read some latest medical discoveries and then new medicines and that. We used to wonder why is he doing that? But his passion was medicine. And he used to prescribe some, little prescriptions here and there for the people nearby who had some stomach issues or headache or fever and things like that. And he continued that, and after retirement, he went and joined as an assistant to a doctor to just be with him. So once you have that feeling and the heart, what you want to do, your intellectual pursuits, you may do it, but your heart looks for something else. In the same way, in the field of spirituality also, we may read all these scriptures and listen to lectures and all those things. But what really sustains your interest in this field is how much you have feeling for, maybe in the form of God you may worship, or in these Vedanta we say a love for the self, love for one's own higher nature, love for one's own Atman. That is what really sustains an individual to proceed on in this path, because in this spiritual path, not many people will accompany you. Now, for example, you might have told so many people, okay, come for this satsang, we have this online satsang. And how many of them, you tell me? Because their heart is not there. Their heart is in Dandiya, in a party, or in something else, or watching a movie with friends. So, therefore, unless the heart participates, the personality does not engage in that. Intellectual appeal is okay, but heart has to be developed. And therefore, here we see in the 12th verse, we come to see that how here the author Shankaracharya very clearly indicates that in our life, intellectually when we analyze and look at what is happening in our life, you will find that day in and day out, things continuously change. And our problem is, why misery in our life? We are looking for permanency in the impermanent things. What is subject to change, we expect it not to change. Is it an intelligent approach? Expecting a cat to behave like a dog, or a dog to behave like a cow, or a cow to behave like a lion, or a lion to behave like a dog, or any other animal. It cannot be. Why? Because that is how it is. Similarly, what is subject to change, you expect it not to change. So here gives a beautiful example that everything changes and we waste our time expecting something else to happen. So in the 12th verse, Shankaracharya starts with saying, Dinayaminyau sayam pratah Dinayaminyau sayam pratah Shishiravasanto punarayatah Kalah kridati gacchati ayuhu Tatapi na munchati ashavaayuhu Bhaja Govindam Govindam Bhaja Mudhamate Samprapte Sannihite Kale Nahi Rakshati Dukrin Karane. What is bondage really? Unintelligent way of living is bondage. What is unintelligent way of living? See, if we say, Swamiji, we are all in advanced scientific world. Even in the Stone Age, the human beings were behaving in the same way that we do today. Because of this stupid expectation of changelessness in the change. Permanency in impermanent things. I give the example, I see. Dina Yamini. Dina means day. Yamini is night. Sayam Pradaha. Sayam is evening. Pradaha is morning. Shishira Vasantau. Shishira is winter. Vasanta is spring. Punayadaha. They come again. Meaning what? How can they come again if they have not gone? So, now summer is going, fall is coming. Isn't it? Now, fall season will come and then that also will leave, then winter will come. Winter will go, then spring will come. Spring will go, summer will come. Seasons change. Basketball season is over, baseball season will start. Baseball season is over, soccer season will start. Season change. Dina Yamini. And daily. Day is followed by night. Evening followed by morning. Winter followed by spring. Keep going. And in the process of such changing seasons, we don't realize that we are getting old. And you see very interesting. Kalaha kridati. Time plays with you. Gachati ayuhu. And your lifespan is getting shortened. Ayuhu gachati. Your lifespan is being spent now. It's going on. Now, when you look at a watch and say, watch is running. Watch doesn't run. Watch is in one place, we are running. Does the watch run? Swamiji, time up. Watch is running. What is running? Watch doesn't run. No, what is going on is we are moving constantly. We are going around, round, morning, evening. Imagine the day you have joined your school. Just close your eyes and imagine some 10, 15 years back, 10 years or 12 years or 13 years back, you joined the school. Just close your eyes and remember the first day you entered into the primary school, if you remember. I remember distinctly. I was pushed into the school and I never wanted to go, but I was joined in the school 1 year earlier than what I'm supposed to, because I was making so much of trouble to my mom and dad at home. I think they have just pushed me into school. Just get out of this place. So I used to cry the whole day. I do remember even now. The school was very close to my home, and I would stand next to the window and go on crying. And then primary schools go over kindergarten and then first grade, second grade, third grade. Then now I remember, why was I crying? What was the reason I was crying? So if you look back when you joined your school, how much you felt that you are taken away from the cozy home and play and etc. After that you got used to your friends, you made friends in the school, and then after that you don't want to go home. You wanted to be out in the school or out in the playground. So if you look at yourself, how many things have changed in you? Your priorities changed, your interests changed, your friends changed, your values changed, your understanding changed, your perception has changed, your physical body has changed, and your tastes have changed, your likes and dislikes have changed, so many things. So if you look at it, how the time has just running constantly. Dinayaminyo sayam pradaha shishiravasanto puna ayadaha. Again they come and go. Kalaha kridati, time is playing. Gachati ayuhu, the life is going. Tatapi, even then, namunchati, not released, asha vayudi, the gust of passion. That is the point here. The desire for enjoyments and pleasures and indulgences in this world never wanes. what you have interest, what you developed as your interest in the early part of your youth or early part of your childhood was also indulgence. Indulgence in probably in games, in sports, and then it moved on to something else, movies and this and that, girlfriend, boyfriend, then moved on to something else. The underlying principle is what? We are all constantly indulging in pleasures of the senses and nothing else. What drives a man, what drives a person to do anything in this world is a pleasure-seeking mind. That never goes away. Even as the physical body is getting old, even as one becomes frail and senile and not able to walk, mind is always young. It is looking for pleasures all the time. That's what he says. Please understand, physically body changing, your time and environment around changes. All those things are constantly going on, but your mind and its passions and indulgence and seeking pleasures never goes away. That is the cause of rebirth. According to Hindu theory of reincarnation, rebirth, what causes our rebirth? Why do we come back again and again? Just like winter goes, summer comes, summer goes, spring comes, spring goes, fall comes. So all those things constantly happening. In the same way, we go from this body, another body. Why? Because our desires have not changed. Dinayaminyau sayam pradaha shishiravasanto punarayadaha kalaha kridati gacchati ayuhu tatapi na munjati ashavayu. It's like a gust of wind. How when the wind comes, nothing can stay in its course. He'll just throw everything and go away. Like a tsunami, imagine. It's also nothing but the wind only, it triggers that. It's huge waves are coming from what? Because of the force of wind that is coming in and then pushing the water to such an amount of height. Or any other tornadoes and all the hurricanes and all those things. What we find is it's an intensity of air, uncontrollable air, that is the gust of wind that comes and takes up everything. Such a power it has. In the same way, our desires also have got so much power. Any criminal activity, any murder, any kind of such unlawful activities, all are prompted by a person or a group of people's intense desire, and they could not control their passion and they had to act upon it, and when they act upon it, they go unlawfully, illegally to get things done. So, therefore, all our bondages are caused by uncontrollable amount of, like a wind, our mind. See, wind cannot enter a place where there is no window. Isn't it? Window should be there, then only wind can get in. Right? In the same way, sense objects can get in only when the mind is open. Mind is seeking, and therefore objects become attractive. And the gust of passion comes in. Therefore, we should understand that the problem is not the world. World is always filled with objects. When the mind is seeking it, you cannot say world should change. You cannot change. The world of objects will not change because they are matter and they are produced, they are made. It's like that. Whether your mind is seeking or not determines whether you get caught up in that or not. So the Vedanta always teaches, take care of your mind and don't try to rearrange objects. That doesn't really change anything. You may rearrange, but again you will have the same mind. If the mind is not changed, the world will continue to become a field of passion for such a mind. When the mind is taken care, even in so-called field of passion, you can move dispassionately or further compassionately. Now here, next in what is coming back home, closer to home, what is that kind of passion which we are talking about? What is that which makes us so get caught up in the bondage? Now you see, in the next verse, verse number 13, Shankaracharya says, Kate Kanta Dhanagata Chinta
Kate Kanta Dhanagata Chinta
Vatula Kim Tava Nasti Niyanta
Vatula Kim Tava Nasti Niyanta
Trijagati Sajjana Sangati Reka
Trijagati Sajjana Sangati Reka
Bhavati Bhavarnava Tarane Nauka
Bhavati Bhavarnava Tarane Nauka
Bhaja Govindam Bhaja Govindam Govindam Bhaja Mudhamate Te Kanta Ka. Who is your wife? This is a very interesting question. Huh? Who's your wife? Swamiji, I am not married. Okay, good. Kate girlfriend da. Who is your Saki? Kate Saki. What is, who is your girlfriend or boyfriend, whatever it is. Why are you asking that? Dana Kata Chinta and wealth, etc. Dana Gata towards the wealth, etc. Chinta. Chinta means worry. Here, chinta should be understood as worry. Chintanam is considered to be thinking. Chinta nasti kila tesham chinta nasti kila shamadama karuna sampurnanam ragadvesha viyukta chittanam. There's a beautiful verse. Tesham chinta nasti kila. They do not have real worry in this world. Who have developed? Shamadama karuna sampurnanam. Those who are developed control over the mind and the senses and turned it into passion, into compassion. So chinta is worry. Worry means, it's interesting. There was one person, I don't know whether I told you this before. One lady used to go for morning walk. And there was recently a person in the neighborhood has moved in, and she started noticing this person. This person is an old man, and he used to sit outside his house on a small, outside, what do you call that as courtyard, whatever it is, patio. Outside is that he will sit there, and in front of him is used to be a table, and where you have beer bottle, whiskey, and all these various liquor things. And he used to sit there, drink, and laugh loudly. So she used to go for walk and jogging, and she used to know what kind of a waste at this old age, it's advanced age. How is he spending his time in then drinking and whatnot? So, and then he used to go. And then after some time, when he used to come back after an hour or so, jogging back home, that fellow will be same place, drinking and laughing. So one day she wanted to find out, why is he, living like this? So she went there, and then he was sitting there. Yes, who are you? He asked. And she said, I'm your neighbor nearby. I used to go for walking and jogging every day. And you see, early morning I see you sitting and drinking. And late afternoon also I see you drinking. Oh, what is your purpose of life? What are you doing? He said, this is what I do. This is what I do. I had a lot of money. My father had made money, and then he retired and he died. And then all the money that I have, and then I do this. So at this age, don't you feel bad that you are doing that? What kind of an example you are setting to the youngsters? What youngsters? I'm asking you. So are you not setting a bad example for youth in their 20s and 30s? And he looked at her and said, what do you think is my age? 75? No, I am only 30. She understood. Now I understand. And she went away. At the age of 30, he was looking like 80. Because of what? Because of this unhealthy, unintelligent living. He was drinking and then making. That's how completely wasted his life. So what happens is, when we do not have any higher purpose in life, either professional challenges, professional purpose of goal, or any spiritual goal, or a social goal, whatever be it, unless we have something to look forward to, our life will be full of worries only. That is for sure. Because mind has to be engaged in something. If it is not inspired by a goal which it has to work constantly towards to achieve, if it is not given any challenge of a higher nature, it will easily go down to a lower nature. Okay, now I ask you this question. Many of you have pets, right? Probably back at home, etc. And you go and find out, what is the purpose of being a dog? Tell me. Purpose of being dog is being dog. None of the animals have got even the ability to think of purpose of life. What for I have come here? What is why I am spending day and night? What am I doing? Which direction I am going? What is that I have achieved which I did not yesterday, which I have achieved today, and what is that I am planning to achieve tomorrow? This progressive thinking or going towards some definite goal is not there in all other living beings, and we as human beings, somehow or the other we have become one, and we are given the chance to think, act, plan and act. If that mind is not given this focus and direction, what it will do is chinta. So, dhanagata, kantagata, chinta. What is this? So, ka, te, dhanagata, kantagata, chinta. This is how it should be understood. What is that you are worried about? The worry among your own wife or your own children and your wealth, etc. Ka te kanta, dhanagata, chinta, vatula kim tava na asti niyanta. Niyanta means niyantru, the one who determines your life, one who directs your life. Kim tava nasti? Oh Vatula, oh distracted one, don't you have the Lord or something higher than you which actually is directing you towards a higher goal? This is an interesting point which here Shankaracharya puts it. It is often believed by many of us that we can decide what to happen, what should not happen in our life by our own decisions in life. Most of us have this overwhelming feeling or very emphatic idea that I decide the course of my life. Yes and no. I can say both. Yes, because human beings are given that faculty to do that. No, because your ability is limited. Now, given an environment, given a situation, you can work only within that situation. For example, I have given you again this example. In this room, there are some, let us say, 25 chairs, filled with chairs. Now, I want these 25 chairs to be removed in 2 minutes by one person. Is it possible? Is it possible? No. In 2 minutes, you cannot move 25 chairs out of this room by yourself. Why? Because I have only 2 hands and 2 legs. How can I move so many chairs and heavy chairs out of this room to the other room within 2 minutes? I can't do it. You may say, let's say you are given a project in your workplace or in your own university. If that a project that requires many hands, you can definitely say to your project leader or whatever, hey, I can't do it. Why? Because I have only this limited ability and limited resources, I cannot do it. So if you tell me, if I tell you, sorry, remove all the 25 chairs to the next room within a minute or two, you say, one person? It's not possible. I need more people to do that. Correct? So now you understand. There are impossible things that are there, but possible with many people. If you have 10 people with you, hey, come on, let us take two and finish stuff. So within next 1 or 2 minutes, you're done. Why? Because your number of hands that are available have increased when I give you 10 more people. All right? Now, in the same way, just extrapolate that. What you are capable is X. What many people with you, along with you, is 100x. Correct or not? Now, the concept of God in Vedanta is infinity. Infinity is the nature of God. Meaning, endless. Sahasra Shirsha Purusha, Sahasraksha, Sahasrapad, Sabhumim Vishruto Vrutva Atyatishtat Dashangulam. All hands, all eyes, all nose, all ears, all faces, all feet are His. Therefore, imagine, I am capable of few things, but with God, I am capable of anything. Anything is possible for me. But unfortunately, what happens? We do not have that connection. Many times we say, oh, let God come in front of me, I will ask Him. Why should God come in front of you? In front of you is God only. What else? See, Hitler, as an individual, how much he could have achieved. And with the people's, because he was able to inspire so much, even though it is wrong ideology, all right. But is it not true that he was able to inspire so many people, thousands of people with his words, who also started thinking like him? The Aryan land I want. Get rid of all others. And he could, with his ability to convey the message, communication skills, he was able to, many of them, Napoleon was there, and Hitler was there, and then Pol Pot was there, and so many other in every turn of the century. Saddam Hussein, and what do you call this other guy? What is his name? Osama bin Laden. He's not an individual, right? Remember, he could or she could make many people think like him or her and did something. Good or bad is a different thing. So what a person can achieve versus what he can or she can achieve with many people working together for the same goal is different. It's much higher, much greater. Now, therefore, when we start understanding the concept of God as not a personality, somebody, it is the power behind many. The power behind everybody. The power that makes everyone do whatever they are doing. And prayer is where you invoke that power. Which power? Power that is behind everyone. Power that pushes everyone to act. Therefore, when you say prayer, it is not a pleading, it is not a beggary, it is not demanding from one particular form of God. You are requesting the Lord to make it happen through anybody and everybody who is possibly in front of you, behind you. The side in front of you means whoever is available in that place, whoever is capable of doing. So here, therefore, he says, Trijagati, in all the three words, Sajjana Sangati Eka Bhavati Bhavarnava Tarane Nauka. To understand the nature of God, what we need is those company of those who are thinking in that direction. Sajjana, good people, whose minds are involved and dealing with or devoted to that God who is behind everything. That's why Upanishad says, Isha Vasyam Itakam Sarvam Yatkincha Jagatyam Jagat. That Lord alone is pervading everything, meaning in and through everyone. It is that Lord, one power that is working through all of them. And prayer is a request that you place in front of that power who can accomplish what you want through everybody. He will not act directly, through everyone. Like for example, we are coming, every year we have a fundraiser program, right? This time also we are having in November. So for what we plan is, okay, call an artist, okay, and then arrange a program, have a beautiful hall, and then seating capacity of X number, 1,000 or plus, and then print the tickets and print publicity, etc. Now, who is going to come? How do you know? You are only requesting. You put an ad and then request everybody and tell everybody this is a program that is going to happen and please come. So now, in everybody's mind, when the thought comes that they have to go, there it is. You have to place that thought. You have to appeal to the people. You have to request them to participate. And then, when they come and then give the money and then the fundraiser is done. It is not possible for one person, is it not? Everybody participates, then it becomes an event. In the same way, when we recognize that our problem is not our problem alone, when I place in front of the Lord, this is my request, O Lord, I must believe that power behind everyone is responding to it. That is why he says, Hey Vatula, O distracted one, Kim tava nasti niyanta? Is there not a person or the power behind the whole thing who is leading the whole show? Many examples can be given in this. If a huge building has to be built, is it possible by one person? Is it possible? A whole building, there are structures, there are wooden structures, there are steel structures, there are light, and there are electricity, and then air conditioning, and then ceiling, and then painting, and windows, and carpentry, and so many different aspects of a building is there. Not one person can only plan, but execution is done by many people. Everybody working together, coordinating, and then there it is. In the same way, God works through every hands, every feet, every eyes, every pair of eyes, every pair of hands, every pair of feet. That's why it is said in the Upanishads and also Gita also. Sarvada pani padam yad sarvadokshishiro mukam sarvada shrudi malloke sarvam avritya tishtati. Through every hand, through every ears, every nose, every feet, it is the Lord who is established in this world. When we thus recognize it is the Lord who is making everything happen, our concerns and worries, etc., we should place in front of the Lord. Okay, Lord, I have done my best, now you do the rest. It is like this, when you eat the food, who is digesting it? Do you ever think about it? You have placed the food and you have swallowed it. And then, it's happening every day. You don't even pay attention to it. It is happening. A mechanism is going on inside your body. If proper food is digested, energy is removed, energy is separated out, and all the unwanted things are thrown out. Breathing is going on, blood circulation is going on, and then all other various chemicals and minerals, and then combination wherever it has to go, and it's going, all the various parts of the body is functioning. It's such a miracle it is. Gurudev used to say, every human being is a miracle. How is that possible? What a missionary it is. Thinking missionary. Not a matter. It is such a powerful missionary which has the ability to think. So, don't underestimate the power of nature through which the Lord is working. So, our immediate worry is about Kate, Kanta, Dhanakata, Chinta, Vatu, Lakim, Tava, Nastiniyanta, Trijagati, Sajjana, Sangatiriya. In all the three worlds, Sajjana Sangati, association with those people who have complete faith in the power behind everyone. Only that will really take us away from the bondage of worldly existence. Bhavati Bhava Arnava Tarane, to cross over the mighty ocean called Samsar, Nauka, the boat. Imagine that you are in the middle of the huge mighty ocean. You have absolutely, your ship is wrecked, and then you have no way to come out and reach the nearest shore. There is one Nauka, or the boat is available, and that is Sajjana Sangati, meaning association with good thoughts. Association with the people who have that sattvic thoughts. Bhavati Bhavarnava Tarani Nauka. Therefore here, this Ananta Samsara, Samudratara Naukayitabhyam, Guru Bhakti Dapyam. In Guru Bhakti Stotra also says Ananta Samsara Samudratara Naukayitabhyam, Guru Bhakti Dapyam. In this Samsara Sagra, why it is called Samsara Sagra? Because we don't know the depth. We do not know how deep it is. So if we look at our own mind and look at how many desires and passions and lust and then greed and then jealousy and then anger and everybody is a deep ocean. Every individual is a deep ocean. How many things are inside within us as desires and passions and impressions and experiences and demands and expectations? Each one of us is a history. Because so many things are there. If I ask you, come on, tell me about your life. Oh my God, you should not make that mistake of asking anybody. Ramayana shuru hoga. Everything has started way back in so many years, Swamiji. And tragedies and comedies and so many things will be there. Success and failures and everyone has got. We can only remember this life, huh? There are so many things which we have which you can't even remember. Everyone is a moving ocean. Samsara Sagara. So, how is it possible for us to overcome all these things? Can we just say it is not there, and then forget about it? Or go blue, 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 drink, and I am fine. That's what we do. Try to escape. How much ever as you escape, for some time you may probably run away from this mind. After some time when you wake up, again it is there, waiting for you. Come on, get up, I'm here. So as we age, we should become more and more free of our mind. But unfortunately what happened, as we age, we become more and more occupied with the mind only. That's why when two people, when they meet even when you walk in the road or in your own university, you walk, how many of them are really smiling at you? You tell me. Everybody is caught up in their own world, especially in the university. I have seen with that thing in your head, like a moving machine and like a robot. Nobody even notices your presence. Forget about it. They go on. Say like a machine, go to their classroom, sit there, and go on listening and writing there, and come back. Where are we in touch with this world? Why? Because as we advance in our life, our preoccupation with the mind extremely on the increase. If you've seen a child which is just 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old, no preoccupation. Have you seen that? And nowadays, of course, they also have this iPad and there's a game, etc. They are also occupied. But in general, if you just leave it to them, leave all those things away from them, they're just happy. They're not occupied. A Mahatma lives in an unoccupied mind. His mind is free, available, listening. A very interesting thing I have to tell you. In 96, I think, 96 or 98, we had our Swami Tejaman, they had a camp in Santa Rosa. It's in the Northern California, Santa Rosa. And we all went there. It was a Bhagavatam, I think, Bhagavat camp. And we went, I was there, myself and few other Swamijis and others, we were all there. And then near Santa Rosa, there was another person who lived, Eknath Ishwaran. He was a earlier Berkeley professor, English professor, I think. And he, slowly over a period of time, as he was a professor, he also started giving lectures on Gita. A lot of Americans started listening to his lectures on Gita, and then slowly he built a foundation called Blue Mountains Foundation or something, Nilgiri. He is originally from Ooty, Nilgiri area, so he had that Blue Mountain Foundation or something in Santa Rosa. And then he started, after his retirement, he started living there with his immediate disciples, you can say, or followers. And then he was almost 80 or so when we met him. So myself and Swami Tejamanand and many others, we went to just see him. It was a very distinct experience that I had. So we all went, I think 4 or 5 Swamis, 4 or 5 or others. So we went there, and then the devotees and disciples who were there, they welcomed us and then gave some small thing to eat. And then slowly this Eknath Ishwaran ji, he came and sat down, and he came and sat down and said, I'm very happy that all of you came to see me. Now, please forgive me for this, but I have to individually spend with you 5 minutes. And he came closer to each one of them and forgot about everybody else in this room. And he started with the youngest one, that was me. Swami Tejamananda was there. I have to spend time with him. And he sat next to me. Tell me about yourself. Where are you coming from? Which part of the country you are from? And how long you have been practicing spirituality? What are your interests? What do you like to read? What are the things you have read? What are the practices that you do? How are you feeling about it? And I'm telling you, nobody in my life has ever questioned that. Exclusively 5 minutes. And after 5 minutes he said to me, excuse me, I have to go to the next person. And the whole half an hour, he spent 5 minutes with each one of them. 6 of us. And last one was Swami Tejamananda. And he was also wondering. And he said, I'm so happy that I came to know you pure souls in my life. And within, I think, few years he passed away. But that experience that I had with him, even though 5 minutes only with that person, that is called Sajjana Sangha. Real association with Mahatma means they are fully available to you with no preoccupation in the mind. Very rare to get such kind of people. Everybody is busy. Everyone is busy with so many things. I'm sure all of you are busy with so many things. But you must take time to know, to be with the nature, to be with yourself at least. Nothing, no occupation of the mind, no TV, no book, no iPad, no phone, no Facebook, no Twitter. Just be with yourself. And you will find, first of all, you will find it's uncomfortable because your mind will bring up some, I have that thing I have to do, I have this project I have to finish, that person I have to call, this. Let the world wait. You just stay with yourself. And this ability to fully make yourself attentively, alertfully, completely, unconditionally make yourself available to yourself as a practice will make you able to practice with everyone around you. And I'm telling you, everybody wants attention. Isn't it? Even a dog needs attention. That's why he takes you for a walk. Do you think you are taking the dog for a walk? That's not the truth. The dog wants to spend time with you. Therefore, as soon as come on, child, let us go. Because otherwise you are so busy with things. Let us just go for a walk. That takes you. But just be with you. So have you found, either whenever you get to find your time with yourself, you are sleeping. You wake up, then again everything's TV is there, internet is there, and the phone is there, Facebook is there, friends are there, books are there, projects are. I'm telling you, when you get married, the first complaint your wife, every wife will have the same. You are not spending time with me. I'm telling you, that will be definitely there. So, train yourself to how to spend time with yourself, with nobody else participating. So that is called Sajjana Sangha. Association with the great masters, they always teach you something which will change you completely. That is the nature of satsanga. So this is what I found, where everybody seeks attention, everybody wants to be listened to, nobody is available. So that is what is called Sajjana Sangha. The association with the people of good thoughts or association with good thoughts. Both are Sajjana only. So, Kate Kanta Dhanagata Chinta Bhatula Kim Tava Nasti Niyanta Trijagati Sajjana Sangati Reka Bhavati Bhavarnava Tarani Nauka. One more thing I have to tell you about is, before we finish, worry is nothing but helpless thinking, directionless thinking, purposeless thinking. Because if your thinking has a purpose, you move forward. You don't get stuck. If it has a direction, if it has a purpose, you will not get stuck. But most of the worries are what? I don't know what to do. I am so unhappy. I don't know what to do. That helpless condition is what is called worry. Whereas thought or thinking is different from sitting and brooding over, worrying, wool gathering. So, when we recognize that our mind is most of the time worrying, which means that you are not moving forward. You have no direction, you have no purpose. And some people enjoy worrying. What are you doing? Just sitting and worrying. Oh, what a waste of time. So, there is no need to worry if we know that life has a purpose. I am moving in that direction, and let me productively think what is next. Not getting agitated or what is next. That is not the point. So I have done up to this point. Now let me proceed on to the next level. I have to think about the next step. So that productive thinking is what is called Chintanam, and unproductive, helpless, directionless, purposeless thinking is called Chinta, worry. And worry has never made anybody productively progressive. A person of worry, and either he gets stuck, status quo, or he goes backward. So, therefore, one should consciously get rid of the habit of the mind that is worrying. Now, if you have any questions, please you can, I think you have the, you can send here also.
Only one question is there.
Yeah. I am writing it here. If you have questions, please send us a message. Somebody asked this question?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Hariom, how can we learn to accept change and not fear it? If we seem to want changelessness. Yeah, not we seem to want, we want changelessness. So how can we learn to accept change and not fear it? See, accepting the change means accepting reality. Accepting reality means what? Accepting what is unavoidable. Like day changes into night. Do you accept it or not? Winter changes into summer or spring. Accept it or not? You have to. Because whether you accept it or not, it is not going to stop. So intelligent way of living is accept what cannot be changed and work on what can be changed. What cannot be changed, why should you spend time and waste your time? What can be changed, work on it. Now, you asked about fear. See, fear is about uncertainty. Fear is about insecurity. Fear is about not having correct knowledge, not knowing. What you don't know also can cause fear. What you're not sure also it can cause fear. Or what you can imagine, that also can cause fear. So fear can be out of anything, any of these things. Now, therefore you understand, if I'm afraid of something, the best way to overcome that is to know about it, what it is. Like for example, all of us, I mean, as a person becomes, 60, 70, 80, he's afraid of death. What is death? I don't know. I don't know what I would be beyond this body. And so I don't know. That don't know, that ignorance is the fear. Second, what I am used to, and I am used to these people or this convenience, this is, and I'm going to lose all of them. I do not know. I mean, when I lose everybody whom I know or everything that I have, that causes fear. Uncertainty causes fear. When it is going to happen, I don't know. So, accepting the change and accepting the inevitable intelligently is the way of the wise, and that doesn't cause fear because, yeah, it is what it is. I used to give the example. Like, in the last Sunday session also we did that. How many of you have gone to Universal Studios Transformers? Or that, what do you call that? Mummy ride? See, you go and you know that when you are in that dark room, when things are coming on you and then making you feel thrown here and there, suddenly you are thrown from one building to another, and then really it creates a lot of thrill. And the part of the thrill is the joy of going through that. Why you are enjoying that? Because you know that there is an end. You will come out of it in another few minutes. That your mind has recorded. This is not permanent. This is temporary. This is temporary. Even this will pass away. Even this will pass away. Even this will pass away. That is there in your mind. Therefore, you go through that and then you come out. In the same way, in life, nothing is going to be there as permanent cause of fear. Even if you are afraid of your own uncertainty about the future or about your body and its ailments, everything is, even this will pass away. Even this will pass away. Even this will come to an end. Good or bad, everything comes to an end. So that ability to look at everything with that understanding, not passively, you actively engage with the knowing it's not going to be permanent. That helps you come out of fear. Fear is because of feeling, it will continue to be there all the time. Yes, anybody else? One more question. Okay. Rubini. How can one not become attached to the fruits of their action and not expect certain rewards? See, there is nothing wrong in expecting rewards. What you are expecting should be practical. That is what it is. For example, you bought a ticket, or you bought a flight ticket, let us say, to go from here to some other part of let's say you are going to India. And you are expecting the flight to arrive in time, or even after having got boarding into them, expecting it to land in India. That is an expectation or not? Is it practical or not? Is it practical? That you got into the flight and it will reach India. When you got boarded the flight and then it has a 20 hours of flight and it will reach India. So with that expectation only you bought the ticket. That expectation is correct. What? That I bought the ticket for that, and that's a real expectation. There's nothing wrong. It is unreal expectations is what is to be first attacked. Everybody around me should love me. Definitely not going to happen. Everybody should understand me. Not possible. Everybody should respect me. Not possible. You know, when I take up this teaching in Sandipani also, there were some 40, 50, 60 students. Everybody should become very intelligent, smart students will get everything at one stroke. That's the most foolish expectation from a teacher. Why? It's not going to happen. Maybe around 5%, 10% of these students will really understand what the others are. Now they are just there. So let us be practical in our expectation. That is the first thing that we should. So completely destroy unintelligent, impractical expectations. First. Second, any expectation is based upon the way and the amount of action you have done towards that. If you have done nothing, what do you expect? Can you expect anything if you have not done anything? Obviously, that is an unintelligent expectation anyway. I have done nothing, and then what are you expecting? Amount of effort you put, plus so many other factors, known and unknown, decide the result. Not everything that you do has to be successful. That is not possible. If everybody can claim success by their own actions, nobody will be a failure. But that's not the case. Your action coupled with so many other factors, including what you have done in the past, that decides the future results. Not what you did today. What you did today is only a fraction of what you have been so far. That also adds to the result. So, this is a theory that Hinduism works on, that karma is not only what you do, but what you have done. That you should keep into account. Now, let me give an example. Let us say you are an expert in a particular dish, preparing a particular dish, and everything you are worst. Everything that you mean. Some kids will come and say, Swamiji, I ask them, what do you cook? Swamiji, I don't cook, I only bake. Okay, something you make. So if I have had your food and I have become tragically ill because of having had your food, and one day even if you bring the best of your cake that you are expert in, still my approach to you will be, you keep it there, I will take it when I am ready to take a risk. Why? Because your past influences that action. Me who has suffered because of your food earlier, even if you are bringing the best of the food in front of me, I will be able to take it only with a pinch of salt. I said, no, this person does not really cook well. I don't know what is going to be this kind of food. So your past influences the present. So karma is not what you do today. Karma includes what you have been doing in the past. So therefore, expecting the result out of today's action is also unrealistic, because the past influences the result as well. Number 2. Number 3, the result is not only decided by your actions and your own past actions, but also the actions of others around you. That also is there. With which environment you are living, who are the people with whom you are living, their actions also influence that. So, understand, let our expectations be realistic, and also, even as you do your best, leave the rest. You did your best. Whatever result comes, just take it. And then next time do better. Don't curse yourself if the results are not expected to the way you wanted it. Don't worry about it. It has its own time. It will come. One more question. Okay. Good. Today we have so many questions here. Who is this?
I think Setu.
Setu?
Yeah, from Bedi.
Oh. Life always seems busy. It almost seems like we are proud to be so busy. Crazy. How do we get out of this? You know, today's world is like a what do you call what do you call that? A kind of a prestige issue, or say earlier times. Let me give you an example. Most of the actors, Hollywood actors, etc., to have a cigarette in the hand, they consider it as a fashion. They consider it as a prestigious thing to do. Now, the same thing when they do, people look at them with great amount of sympathy. Sickly fellow. Is it not the whole trend has changed? If they are sent to the corner of a room, you go and sit there and smoke. You're not fit to be in this. You see, what was a passion or a fashion at some point of time, today the thinking has changed. So also, we will come to a point in our life itself, you will see, being busy is sickliness. Showing yourself busy is not actually a good thing. Relax. So it's like a fad, okay, I'm busy. Such busy people, most of the time, we will find that they don't have even time to appreciate their own being. Their own life they cannot appreciate. And after they get old and then they run here and there, then by the time they are ready to live, their body is ready to die. So it is necessary that we had to be busy doing things, but you must consciously spend time, as I said, to be away from the busy, crazy world and just be with yourself. Start with the 5 minutes every day. Just be with yourself. With no occupation in the mind. Just keep it empty. Be with the nature. Look at nothing in particular. Just enjoy. You will find the true happiness that we are all seeking is not out there somewhere. It is not in the business of the mind. It is not in the occupation of the mind. It is something which is so internal, so personal, so near, which we are not paying attention. Once you start paying attention to it, that nothing can replace it. All right. Any other questions? Over. All right. Thank you so much. And then a few things I have to tell you. That is, we are trying to show Gurudev's movie on a quest to all the university campuses around here in LA area, UCLA, UCI, UC Riverside, and then USC, other places. So please help us in showing that beautiful picture some of you have seen. It's such a beautifully portrayed picture about the life of Gurudev. Do please take some initiative to connect to your department head or whatever, student council, and make it happen. It will be a great tribute to our own Puja Gurudev, right? That is one thing. Second is, please have study groups in your campus, and even this program can be watched or held as a small activity in your own room or some other place where you can gather and then do it. But do some study groups regularly, if not every week, bi-weekly or bi-monthly, whatever you can do, please do that. Next to be, bi-weekly means twice a week, is it? No. Is it? Once in 2 weeks. Next satsang is on October 21st. Okay. So that is again a Wednesday evening around the same time, 7:30. And spread the word so that more people can join in and we can have idea is to give the correct thoughts to people. What they do with that is their own. At least we should share those thoughts. Om sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayah, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhat bhavet. Om shanti shanti shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Just 5 minutes after this talk, spend time exclusively with yourself. Nobody else should participate. Enjoy a relaxed state of mind.